Right now we're streaming live and we're streaming on Instagram Live and on TikTok. I am really, really lucky today because I have Miss Landree Morbi with the Batch Companies and from Batch Leads. And she is going to be covering some amazing information on how to use all of their apps and all of their services and all of their tips. And as a user, I can tell you that a lot of my business has come from the lists that they provide me, the skip tracing that they provide me, and all the technological systems that I was able to put in place as a result of it. And Landry, in the beginning, she's going to be covering some basics on how to use their platform. But then towards the end, what she'll do is she's also going to go into some really, really deep and high level stuff. So for those of you who are just tuning in, you're going to want to stick around for the entire training because she's going to cover some great content. And then at the very end, from what I understand, Landry, we're going to have a great discount or a code for our viewers and for the users and for the people that registered. Yeah.
I'll have to grab that. I might have to send somebody a message to get that. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
To get
Is
you
my
in.
mic still coming in a little bit lower? Or is it okay?
It's a little bit lower, yeah,
I think,
but I can hear you
hear me
okay.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I just switched. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Landry. Thank you for doing this for us. I know you're really busy. I know it's Thanksgiving week. I appreciate it. My team appreciates it. The people that are on this call, we all appreciate you doing this for us. So thank you very much.
Of course. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. And thank you guys for hopping on today. I think this is going to be a great meeting. Like Paul said, I'm going to just be sharing some basics. For those of you especially that don't currently use Batch Leads or Batch Dialer, I'll kind of give you an idea on how the tools work. If you guys want to, I don't know exactly how it will work here on the meeting just because we're live in a couple different places. So I might not be able to see your questions pop up, just depending. But if you do have them, still post them. I don't know if Paul, you'll see them, but I'm happy to answer questions throughout for you guys, and we'll kind of go into just whatever discussion. So anyway, let me share my screen with you guys. And for those of you that don't know me, I have worked with Batch for about 4.5 years now, which is crazy. Time has gone by so fast. And I am the community manager. So I get to hang out with everybody within our Slack community. It's much like Discord, if you guys are familiar. Can you see this, by the way, Paul? It should be showing Slack. Okay, cool. I just wanted to share this link with you guys. I'll probably share it later in the call, but if you guys end up ever having questions or need more clarification or want another spot to network, this is a really great place to come and then to also just ask questions about the products. But let's just jump right into some of the basics here within Batch Leads. This one you guys might be more familiar with. People don't always just immediately jump in to start using a platform for dialing. A lot of the time, people, when they're beginning, they might start with something like Google Voice or just on their cell phone. So we'll jump into that after. But using these in tandem, they are separate softwares. They are still all under kind of that Batch umbrella. But Batch Leads is kind of, you'll hear a lot like all in one. You can generate your data, manage and organize it here, do certain outreach things like direct mail in here, and has simple reporting functionality. You can connect your CRM. So it's a really great, powerful platform that most people are familiar with this one, maybe before jumping into something like Batch Dialer. What I'm going to share with you guys later on in kind of today's meeting is maybe some of the best lists that I see people having really great success with right within Batch Leads. But let's just jump into a little bit of a high level kind of overview about how you use some of the tools in Batch Leads. For those of you that maybe haven't used a software like this, or maybe you have, but you just haven't checked out Batch Leads and you've been curious about trying it. So basically how this one right here, this property search tab, this is by far the most popular, I guess you would say, feature, the area that most people go to. If you guys ever hear the term pull a list, this is where you're going to be doing that. There's other things you can do just depending on your strategy and your business. Let me move this over here. Like if you guys are driving for dollars and collecting properties out on the go, you can do that in here. You can reach out to real estate agents through agent outreach. There's a ton of different ways depending on your guys' strategy, but most people gravitate towards just pulling a list because it's most effective in your time, and you don't have to spend a ton of time going out and collecting properties one by one and going down and making them, super specific, rather than just putting a couple filters together and then pulling a list into your account in just a few minutes or seconds, really depends. But basically how it works is most people use this kind of location area to look up maybe an entire county or a city or maybe a zip code, just depending on your preferences. If there's somewhere really specific that you want to try to focus in on to find properties. And that whole idea of, just for those of you, because I know we have a little bit of a mix of those of you that are maybe a little bit more brand new and those of you that are more advanced and you've already been talking to people, you've already got a few deals closed, but you're essentially pulling up a list of addresses, whether they're going to be off market, the property owner hasn't listed it with like a real estate agent essentially to sell their property, or on market, because we do have real-time listing data in batch leads, which is really nice. And a lot of people don't realize that we have cash buyers in here too. Really, really easy ways to build awesome cash buyers list and batch leads. So hopefully I'll get to show that to you guys today as well. And then this gets forgotten about quite a bit, this boundary search. This is really great for if there's a very specific area that you want to learn more about, or maybe you already have a property under contract and you want to go and look at that specific subdivision and see if there's a cash buyer maybe just down the street you could give a call that might be interested in your property. So this boundary tool is really valuable for focusing in on something very small and specific, essentially. So just to give you guys an idea, let's just say that we're trying to look at properties in the city of Tampa, Florida. I'm just going to type it out in the search bar. And before you jump into all the filters, because there's so many different directions you could go in, and it can get complicated quickly. So just don't rush yourself as you're going through it if you're not familiar with it. But I always tell people to choose their strategy first, just so it lays the foundation for the rest of your filters. The system knows exactly what you're looking for. And I'm going to choose off market for now. This came out a couple of months ago. If you guys aren't aware, Batch Leads came out with some new plans. I want to say like 3 months ago, and they came out with all included skip tracing. So you literally never have to pay for skip tracing again. It's so awesome. I was so surprised when we came out with that update, but it also came out with this AI tool. So when you're looking, it's only for off market, but this is one of the first ways I just wanted to touch on that you can filter in here. If you're just wanting a really straightforward way to go and find properties using this algorithm to find property owners that have essentially the most motivation to sell, they're most likely to have motivation. Depending on your plan, because you will be limited if you're in like a lower plan to the medium tier, but in the higher plans, you could say, hey, show me all the property owners that are most likely to be interested in accepting an offer. And it's based on a ton of different distress indicators so that it's pulling up property owners that are going to have that higher likelihood, which is really cool. You could use it by itself if you want to, but I'm going to be showing you guys the deeper filters a little bit later today on really how to use those, stack your list to build effective lists so that you're not just pulling the same list that everybody is and then not seeing results and wondering why. You can build very custom lists in here. So don't forget about this. It's for just off market. And then your quick list. Honestly, a lot of the top lists to pull when you guys are going in and pulling data are your quick list. I mean, your all filters is where you guys are going to actually build that into a very valuable list that is different from everybody else's, rather than just pulling like a massive high equity list and saving it into your account. But still, looking at these categories is, number one, a really efficient way to pull data. So you're not sitting here forever trying to build this very niche list. You could just say, hey, I'm looking for properties in Tampa. I want them to be off market, not listed with an agent right now. And I want them to be in pre-foreclosure. A lot of the time, like especially with some of these smaller lists, people will select the properties and save them. And that really, in reality, if you were doing this yourself, would take you only a few seconds. So this is definitely by far the most efficient way to just get data into your account. I have talked to a few people that for some reason really like cold calling and they want to pull the huge, the whole bulk list and start making phone calls. But most of the time you're going to be actually taking a little bit more time to go through all of your filters and kind of specify exactly who you're looking for. But to give you guys an idea on some of the categories that are available, things like absentee owners, property owners that don't live there. It could be that the property is vacant, so nobody's living there, or it could just be that they have a tenant or somebody renting it from them, kind of like a tired landlord, which is over here. Vacant properties that are completely empty, high equity, new or old listings if you guys are submitting offers on the MLS, which is just different categories available. Owner occupied properties where the owner is actually living there, free and clear, unknown equity, inherited list, tax default, FSBOs, vacant lots. The list goes on. I think there's like 26 categories in total in just this quick filter section. So these are the best way to pull a quick list, essentially. this is where you guys can build the granular or the kind of deeper, more granular list where you're specifying the years owned, the types of properties, the year build. So instead of you just pulling a massive list of properties that you don't know if they're going to be pulling up apartments when you're not really interested in those, or properties that maybe recently sold, this is where kind of the power in your list comes, because you're telling the system exactly who you're trying to filter out and focus in on. But we'll go and get into more of the details here in a little bit, but just kind of want to give you guys an idea on how it works. So after you go through and apply your filters, whether you're just relying on these quick lists, you're using maybe batch rank in tandem with pulling a list in here, or you're building all of these different kind of custom categories on top of each other, you'll view your results and then save them into your account. One of the last things that I want to show you guys here is just kind of a high level overview of using property search. For those of you that maybe already use it or have been thinking about it, it's so important to be organized in your business. In the long run, after you start adding more and more data into your account, things are going to fall through the cracks if it's not organized. So this seems like a really trivial thing, but I am super passionate about it because the people that I talk to within the community that have been using Batch for a super long time, they can no longer find their important data because they never came up with a way that was clear on how to save their information. So to give you guys some tips here, when you go to save the info, you always have the ability to save agents. This is an off-market list, so I'm really not concerned with that, but it's always there for those of you that is applicable to. We're going to go ahead and just save these properties. This was just a pre-foreclosure list. We didn't apply anything crazy on top of this just to kind of go over the basics. But when I think of my list, they're really straight to the point. I don't overcomplicate the list name, and the tag is more of like the subcategory. It typically includes a lot more information, but these are my current lists in my account to give you guys an idea. I always just keep it focused on one point. So here's a low equity list, high equity, virtual driving for dollars, tax default, vacants, empty nesters, tired landlords. The list goes on, but they're really straight to the point. So for this list, because they're pre-foreclosures, that's the list I'm going to put it into. It's the main idea to me. It's going to be easy for me to know what's going on with that list. And Paul, I'd be curious to hear about kind of how you keep things organized too. So I'm going to go ahead and just save it to this pre-foreclosure list. But when you're just getting started, you're just going to type out what you want that name to be. And there should be a drop down to create it as a new list. So let's just put it into this guy. And for the tag, this is probably the most important part. Like I said, it probably seems really trivial, but you'll thank yourself later if you do something in the beginning and do it over and over again. Something that works for you is important. But the most important part when you're using your list in tags is to reference your list name in your tag, because now you're kind of connecting the two where it is now a subcategory to that main idea. Seems like a small thing, but makes a huge difference. And then I typically always include where I got the info and when I got it. And lately I've been doing it by the month. I used to do it by the date or the specific date or the week. And then I started noticing that my account was getting really messy. And I can now look back and see all of the properties that I added in the month of November in 2024, as time goes on, and see what lists worked really well. I can kind of start getting an idea of what happened within my account in those certain periods of time rather than just like a specific date. And my account's not going to be a big mess. So seems like a really small thing, but if you guys can get into a good practice of picking something that works for you and makes sense for you and your team, if applicable to you, it'll be a breeze to find your info later. So when you guys click save, that's where you're going to get the included contact information already applied. You don't have to pay anything additional. You don't have to do anything extra in your account. It's going to already be on those properties. So I'm kind of curious, Paul, like, how do you guys go about when you're saving data into your account? Like, is there a specific way that works really well for you guys that you found that helps you manage your data, not have things fall through the cracks? Oh, I think you're muted. Paul, just a heads up, I can't hear you. I think you might be muted. Let me make sure. I'm going to see if we have any questions too. So if you guys do
Sorry
have
about
questions
that.
about this too, I'm not sure if I'll be able to see them, but
or no? I'm still muted.
yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, that's really weird. So I'm just gonna have to pick up my mic because my headset just doesn't seem to be working.
Okay.
So yeah, you read my mind because the thing is, that's how we used to do it. We used to label it, and then we used to label it daily,
Mm,
and that was almost too micro because then it was like it was so much information that you kind of you get overwhelmed, and it just turns into like white static, and then you don't really use it. So yeah, I think labeling it by the month is how we do it too. It just makes more sense for us to do it that way. Um, but Juan had a question,
okay, cool.
and one of his question was, you can't have a list, you can't mix uh, lists or different categories of lists together, can you? And I
You
think I
can.
know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna let you answer it and why you probably don't want to mix these lists unless you're list stacking.
Right. Yeah, the great question first off, and let me know if this helps too. But I think it's gonna, number one, it's gonna depend on you. I do know plenty of people that like to just have a very broad list and they kind of just put all of like their main points into that list. I don't like that just because you aren't able to see later on. Like the more people I talk to, at least that don't have an organized process and say, like, well, what lists have worked for you guys in the past? They're like, I don't know. They have no way of tracking which list was performing a lot better or why certain lists weren't answering. They didn't really know what list it was. So that's the only reason I'm against mixing lists because you can't track anything and you can't move forward without tracking things. That's my opinion and what I've seen in other people's businesses and where they lack a lot of the time is that organization. But there is also nothing wrong with like stacking your list and making it clear in your list or tag name. I go over this example a lot. I don't know if you guys have ever, for those of you that are using batch leads, I go over since we brought in this new filter, failed listings. This is just an example, but let's just say that you were pulling a vacant list and you're like, this is kind of too straightforward for me. What if I made sure they've also failed? So these are expired, canceled, or properties taken off the MLS homes here. So here I'm making this very custom list already and kind of stacking things on top of one another. But the key is even though we're going to be kind of combining these topics, like I just said, I'm against, if you make note of it in your list and tag, absolutely. That would be the only or the thing that I would say is just keeping track. Like you guys will see here. I know I still have pre foreclosure applied, but there you go. I have a 3 stack list of pre foreclosures, vacant, and failed. There's 4 properties, but I know just a really small list. But to give you an idea, sometimes I do combine things. I just make a clear note. Like this is a not only a vacant list, but it's vacant failed listing. So hopefully that kind of helps. If you guys are stacking, just make sure you make note so that when you go back and be like, that was a really good list. Like what data that did I pull in that? What's working really well for our team rather than just making it kind of like too much of a melting pot of data. So let me know your thoughts on that. That's what I would recommend doing if you guys are going to be jumping into list stacking. Just make note of what you're doing.
And Landry, there's some people who are on this stream um, that I don't know why it's giving me that alert. We have an upgraded account, but I might have to look at that. There are some people who are also real estate agents. So not they're real estate agents and they're real estate investors. So some of them are looking at this and they're seeing the expired listings things, and this is also a tool I think even for those real estate
Yep.
agents where they can go back and they can go and try to get listings out of this as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually this really cool, I can't remember when this came out, but this was highly requested, especially for those of you that are real estate agents. And also, if anybody here, just depending on what you're doing in your business, we service a ton of people, even from roofing and people that are contractors or offering different home services, real estate agents, title companies, whole bunch of different people use the tool. So a lot of people will jump into batch leads as they're investing or maybe they're wholesaling to begin, but so many people don't realize that you guys can use it for so much more. But to give you an idea, for those of you that are agents, maybe you're looking for like those failed listings, expired listings. Of course, that status is going to be there, but this one came around recently too, this failed listing date. So maybe you're really trying to get on top of those opportunities quickly that just failed or maybe have failed a longer period of time ago that maybe aren't getting called as frequently. So you can have a better conversation and not call people that are being bombarded either. So there are a lot of things you guys can do in here, or for people that are maybe submitting offers on the MLS trying to find agents to work with that are listing properties that say, I'm looking for a cash offer, or we're looking for a cash offer, or this is an investor special. This is really cool too. I was waiting forever for this to be added, but you guys can also look up properties that have certain keywords or phrases in the description if you're dealing with on-market properties anyway. But really, really cool filters available for those of you that are doing something a little bit different rather than just maybe your average, jumping right into off-market or direct to seller. And let's see here. Was there any other questions that you saw, Paul? Just
No, I'm going
we're on
through
the
them right
same
now.
page. Okay, cool.
Okay, so one of the questions that just came in, Landry, was, is there a limit on the size of our lists that we can compile, and a limit on how many we can export? And can we import lists as well?
Yes, for all of those. Yes, there's a limit on the growth plan, which is the lowest plan. For example, it is 10,000 leads per month that you can bring in, all including contact information, including imports, like from an external, like a spreadsheet that you might have from somewhere else, like the county, for example, or a different software. And it's over here, by the way. The next plan up, I believe, is 35,000 that you can bring in every month. And then the next plan up is 75,000 per month. And then there's export limits too, that you guys can check out. I'm going to start throwing out a bunch of numbers, then you guys are going to lose track. So maybe I'll send that page at the end with your link. But yes, you guys will see that clearly on each plan, just depending on what your needs are. But to give you guys an idea on like importing your own spreadsheet, if maybe you've been thinking about using batch leads, you want to come in here, get included contact information on your outside spreadsheets, because it's for that too in these new plans, or just start managing, your data all in one place here. Go to import and do a bulk import, and then you're going to basically bring in that spreadsheet to start organizing in here and then get all of the phone numbers included, which has been really cool. That has been a game changer for people since they brought that about probably about 3 months ago. So yes.
Yeah, I used to, prior to Batch, I was a big Mojo dialer guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would use their neighborhood search tool to be able to get like their data and use their
Mm-hmm.
numbers. The thing is that when you use their platform, you can use it to dial, but you can't export those numbers out. So you can't do any type of like cross
Really?
marketing
Wow.
with it. So that's a huge disadvantage, especially for the people that are using a dialer like theirs and then not being able to get those numbers. Whereas here, once you get the data, it's your data. You can do what you want with it.
100%. Yeah, and what's really cool too, because if I have the time to go over some things within Batch Dialer with you guys too, what's really nice and what I'll be teaching people as well, like when we do classes throughout the month, is let's just say that you want to begin with cold calling. First off, you guys saw how easy it is. Of course, I'm here explaining it. It's going to be longer, but if you guys really went in there, you'd search your area, click a button, click a list, pull it into your account if you wanted it to be that simple. And then when you're in my list, first off, you already have the contact info, so you don't have to waste money or time there. And then all you have to do is just select them and then push them on over to Batch Dialer. So first off, let's just say that you begin with cold calling. You want that to be your main or your kind of beginning strategy for outreach. Maybe you go through and you dial through your campaigns a few times, and maybe you've dialed through the campaign like 3 times and you haven't reached everybody that you wanted to. There's still a good handful of no answers, or you keep hitting people's voicemails that you just can't get a hold of. You already have the data here. You could then maybe try to start a direct mail campaign, or maybe if they're in your market, maybe you go door knock if you like to jump into doing something like that as well. So yeah, exactly. Or maybe you guys just want to export it and put it into something else. Maybe you have somewhere where you have different workflows that you want to work out of, or send text messages. That's really difficult nowadays, but because we
Can
do
we talk
technically
about
have
that
it.
for
But
just 1 second, Landry?
yes.
About the data, because that's another that came up right now in the comments, and I think it's important to note. So, it's really frustrating when we're making our calls, or we're sending out messages, or whatever it is that you're using the data for, and it's wrong numbers, disconnected numbers, landlines, a lot, in some cases. So I know Batch has really good data. Can you comment anything about that, and what makes it better, I think, in my opinion, personally.
Yeah, we're cross-referencing multiple data providers, which of course we can't disclose with people because that's our secret sauce. But our accuracy with like our phone numbers, for example, is anywhere from 70 to 80% accuracy, which is the best in the business, especially compared to some of the other softwares you might be familiar with, which are closer to around the 40% accuracy, which is really crazy to think about, especially when you see that compared like in a chart. Like really how much money and time you're wasting, even with just that small percentage there. But the data that you guys are getting with like the addresses, the listing data, things like that is being updated daily for you guys in Batch Leads. So really great data. That's the number one thing that Batch really prides themselves on is providing you guys with good data that you're not going to be wasting your time on. Of course, you can't get 100%. You know, you're going to run into that. You're going to run into people that may even be lying that you got the wrong number. There's just so many different factors that come into play with that, but really great data that you guys can expect within Batch Leads. And oh yeah, the other thing I was going to share, I almost forgot to share this too. Something I literally forget about all the time is what's really cool is that when people are using, because of course, Batch Leads and Batch Dialer were of course under the same umbrella of Batch Service. When people hit a disconnected phone number in Batch Dialer, that data is sent back to Batch Leads and it is always going through and enriching the data in Batch Leads. So if something is being marked as a disconnected phone number, that's coming over and affecting the data over here in your Batch Leads account so that data is consistently being updated and marked as, you know, disconnected if that's the case for it in the skip tracing data. So pretty
And you
cool
bring
stuff. I don't know of anybody else that does that.
you bring up a really good point too. So for the person that's listening to this and they're looking at this and they're saying, okay, so somebody makes a call, they use batch dialer, the number comes up as incorrect or disconnected, and then it's marked internally in the system. What what they're hearing is that, well, then we're sharing data, right? Everybody is sharing this data and these numbers internally. What do you say to somebody that says, well, I'm using data that other people are using too?
Well, of course, I mean, if you're going to be working in the same market as people, if me and you are neighbors and we say, hey, I'm going to go pull the pre-foreclosure list today, me too. Well, then, yeah, we're going to pull the same people up. I mean, that's to be expected. I think a lot of the time, and there are services out there I've heard of, I'm not super familiar with that they'll like sell you a market or whatever, but you have to realize that people are able to, this is public information, people are able to pull that information. It doesn't mean that if you mark something as, or you make a note, because I've got this question before, like let's say that I gave this contact, like let's say this person's named John, I gave him a call and I was like, oh, I had a great conversation. This is his right phone number. I verified it. You're not going to get my data over in Batch Leads. Nobody's going to see that shared verified marking that you marked on that number or the note that you put on that property or get any of that information that you guys are doing. But of course, being able to pull that information in your market, yes, that is available for people to pull. So
Yeah.
definitely something to keep in mind.
I mean, I tell everybody,